Hi everybody, and welcome to our presentation about Titleblock management using SMARTAnnotate as a part of this year's webinar week by B&W Software. I just looked at the participants list and there are so many different nations. That's great. Thank you for found your way to us. So today our speaker is Jan Stotfang, the CEO of B&W Software. He will show you some tips and tricks how to make format management easier for you. And I'm your moderator, Franziska Osterburg. Perhaps you've already heard one or two webinars this week, but here's a brief description of what we are doing in the next 45 minutes. The webinar will be recorded because we want to publish it on YouTube afterwards. So in case you want to replay it or try any tricks, you can look at YouTube then later. Jan will give a short introduction to the topics and present them live in Creo Parametric. And this is followed by a question and answer session at the end. So use the question functionality of GoToWebinar. Ask us any question you want, and we are trying to answer it at the end of this webinar. In case we don't get every question answered, so we will the video contact it later on. So that's it, and I want to hand over to Jan Stotfang to start the webinar, and I wish you an exciting webinar with new insights and have fun.
Yes, good afternoon and welcome everybody to this webinar session. It's the English version of the webinar, and I just want to start with a brief overview what's been in the session this afternoon. I'll speak about Titleblock in Creo Parametric in general a little bit, the structure, contents, and limitations. Afterwards, I'll show how SMARTAnnotate can handle title blocks, how the administrator would do it, what do you have for design capabilities in there, and how the user workflow looks like later on. After this PowerPoint presentation, I'll switch over to Creo Parametric and give a live demo of this content. Finally, I'll do a quick summary and open the session up for Q&A at the end. Well, so let's go into the topic directly. Well, as you probably know, the title block workflow in Creo Parametric or Forma Pro Engineer hasn't been changed for many, many years. So as I started with Pro Engineer 11 about 26 years ago, it has been more or less the same workflow. You'll use a format file .frm as kind of a foreground for your 2D drawings, and this format file can be designed by the administrator with kind of unlimited content. Well, this can be tables, symbols, lines, notes, whatever you have at hand in your drawing options. But the most important part is calling out parameters in the title block to show the content about the drawing and or the model. Well, you can call out drawing parameters, and this is the parameter name and parameter name followed by $D. You can call out model parameters direct from the active part or assembly in your drawing with and parameter name, and you can call out system parameters, what I just put in here to the today's date and, for example, the scale of the drawing. Well, if a user wants to get a new drawing or create a new drawing, well, very simple, file, new drawing, opens up this dialog. You can enter the name of the drawing, and you have to deselect this little checkbox over there if you want to have a selection of templates available. Otherwise, Creo will choose the default template for you. Well, there's the Config Pro option that controls this small dialog box if you want to have it checked or unchecked by default. Well, then the next dialog opens. You have to select the model that you want to show in your drawing. And if you have already opened a model in Creo Parametric, it will be shown as a default in here. The next thing you have to specify is choose the method on how you use a template. The first option is using a regular drawing as a template. Well, it can be a template drawing, but it's more or less a regular drawing. It can include the format itself. It can include tables and can include view templates and anything else that you can imagine. This is controlled by the config option start model there and gets you the content of this directory as a list where you can choose from. The second option is you can have an empty format with this format file in the background. So you have to select this format file. Again, you have a config.pro option that's controlling the target directory of this selection. And the third option is to leave everything empty, and you can, or you have to select the format later through the sheet setup command. Well, if you have done so and come to the point that you want to fill in the parameter values, you probably will see that most of the parameter values will fill in automatically if these parameters are already existing in the model or the drawing. If they are not existing, you have to enter manually the parameter type and a default or initial value manually. So this is kind of annoying. So better not to have users entering these parameter types and values manually. If you want to modify or enter these parameter values, you can do so through the default Creo parameter dialog. You, as an administrator, you even can define value lists for allowing users to select from a list, but that's not very easy as well for the administrator as well as for the user. And what you don't have, you do not have any plausibility check if this value is valid or if it's matching your format that you desire as an administrator. Well, there's a few things that I remember during my time as administrator that have to do with the Titleblock. Well, in rare cases, you will have to modify the .frm files. For example, logo changes from your company or a different logo. Well, copyright information may be different. The standardization department has new ideas what parameters need to be called out, and so on. Well, if you do so and are working in a Windchill environment, you can check in the new .frm file, make sure that you lock the file later on, and you make every user to update all the .frm file in all their workspaces. That's the hardest part of it. Well, you all know if you're passing on Creo drawing files to somebody else, you need to make sure that you are sending the .frm file as well. Otherwise, the consumer cannot read the title block. Another Windchill thing is if you're checking out or downloading the .frm file to your local workspaces. As an administrator, you should make sure that nobody will check out this with references, so otherwise you'll get the complete common space database checked out in your local workspace. I don't think anybody wants that. If you're having different flavors for your formats, like different brands or different languages, different customers, you will need to specify separate FRM files for every flavor. And if you need to work on the tables or formats of your tile block, you should do so within a .frm file, because there the formatting of the parameter callouts are not destroyed. Well, that's more or less about all about the tile block within Creo. But how does it look like if you're using SMARTAnnotate or want to use SMARTAnnotate for managing your format? Well, as an administrator, you can compose the format as a format object within the administration dialog of SMARTAnnotate. It also can contain a format file, but it's optional in this case. You can add any kind of tables, stationary, and even user selectable symbols. You can add standard annotation sets in addition to the title block tables. And of course, you can use parameter sets for parameters values to be called out. In addition, you need some properties for all this, because the user needs to see this, select things. So you need name, ID, label, and of course a revision to get back to all the parts of a drawing. If the user again starts a new drawing, he has to select the model as before, and he can specify the template. In the first two cases, when he uses a template or uses empty with a format, if this format or the template has been created with SMARTAnnotate, well, sure, SMARTAnnotate will recognize size and format automatically. In the case you leave everything empty, then you can open SMARTAnnotate later and specify size and format. And that's what I want to show in my live demonstration a little later. If the user has done so, he'll be shown this dialog from SMARTAnnotate. The main tab is activated, and on the left-hand side, he sees the global filter area. So this sets the context where the customer can, or the user can, select formats from, where parameters come from, where notes and standard annotations come from, and so on. So this is, well, the context where he is living in right now. The software shows the name of the active model. It shows how what languages are currently being used in the drawing itself. And of course, you can select the size and the type of the format. And in my case, or in my example, you even can select two symbols in different flavors. When selected the format itself, the next tab, the Metadata tab, provides the user with a very highly customized list of parameters that fit, well, the filter criteria. So in the area of our customer West and of the format he previously has chosen. On the left-hand side, he'll see a status bar for every parameter. And in my example here, there is still some parameters red and yellow. While pressing on the bubble itself, it tells you what's being run in here. In this case, the value doesn't match the regular expression pattern that the administrator put in. You can create all missing parameters and even set the windshield designations that the administrator has intended. You can see where missing parameters are created, either in the model itself or in the drawing, and where the parameters are called out from. You can have parameter values that are being translated. You can make the user choose from lists, and even you can apply some nice functions to add the current date and the current username automatically. And finally, there is a kind of a notification sender that will allow the user to see what errors, warnings still exist in this list. And in most cases, you can repair things through auto correction. But in here, well, if there's values missing, this is not available. So you will have to do this by user input. Well, let's have a look at this in real life. Here's my Creo Parametric. I'm using Creo Parametric 4.0 right now because most of our customers are using this version. And I just will open up one of my demo models. In my case, or my first example, I'll use a plastic part model in here. So model is opened, everything looks fine to me, and I want to just start creating a drawing here. So file new, going to drawing. Well, unchecked dialog here brings me into this dialog for the new drawing. My model is already in here. I'll leave it empty for now and just use the standard input here. So a blank and empty drawing opens. The only thing, my model has been added as the active model already, and I can open my SMARTAnnotate dialog. The first thing you will notice is that the context I'm in here now is plastic parts, and this is because my part already has a parameter, a dedicated parameter with a special value that the software will read when it's started. So this part knows, well, it's a plastic part from the R&D department, and well, because of this, the software goes into this context here. You see the name of the active model. You can see the languages that I'm using, and of course, I'm using now a type of my format in the size of A2. When I do so, the selectable symbols dialog opens and gives me a choice for the company logo, a projection method, copyright, and whatever the administrator envisions to allow to the user to select. Okay, let's just apply this with OK, and you'll see a format is applied to my drawing. I will make this a little bit bigger so we can see everything nicely. So if I open up SMARTAnnotate again, I, for example, can add very easily a second sheet to it. In this case, well, I choose A3 and again my R&D default type. In the meantime, I want to switch my logo to red on all the sheets I have in my drawing. But on the second sheet, I don't want to have a copyright at all. So I apply this in here, apply. So a second sheet that I'm switching here is applied, and you will see that my copyright information has gone, and even the notes that were above the drawing form have disappeared because they are only defined for sheet 1. Now, next thing, well, switching back to sheet 1, for this reason, making it again a little bit bigger so you can see this good. I'm switching to the Metadata tab, and I'm looking at my parameter values. So first of all, I see there's a few still in a red. I have a look what it is. Well, value doesn't match the format visual expression. Close this and, well, start typing in numbers. And finally, when it turns white, well, this is a correct entry. Well, enter a number again, incorrect, correct. Select from a list, enter today's date, enter my name, and so forth, selecting everything and applying things to my drawing format. So we have the document number now, we have the project, we have my names, and so on. Everything seems to be in here and be correct. So let's just, for a moment, close this, and just for display purpose, adding a view here. Just very quick view, and opening SMARTAnnotate once again. And here we can see that I already use different tables in the format for showing where the parameter values come from. So my white parameter values, they are coming from the model, the green one coming from the drawing. And in addition, I did choose another color showing parameters that are translated. So to make this visible once, I will change the language. So right now, the English language is my default language. I will switch this to German. Just apply it. The format and the notes block will be modified. And if you have a look at here, even the name of my article has changed. This gets even more interesting if I'm using Chinese, because I have no idea what's been called out here and wherever. So the translation has been made upfront by an expert. So let's change back to English as a main language and German as one of my secondary languages. So the next thing I want to show is you can use this format in a traditional way. This is what I've been doing here right now, but I have prepared a different format that's not using a .frm file. So it looks very similar. The only difference you will notice is that you can, or if you hover over these lines here, they appear in blue. but you cannot select them because the software keeps track on it, and you cannot select this and cannot modify, move, or delete it. So this is what the software keeps an eye on. But what I can now do is I can delete or remove the frame files from the session, meaning that you don't have any dependency anymore to these frame files. And you could possibly work without having frame files at all. From there, I want to go to a next example here and clear my session from these two items and open up another part, different part. In this case, it's a part from Customer West. And if I create a new drawing, very similar, keep it empty here. Open up SMARTAnnotate. You'll see that I'm in a different filter or context here. And because of this, I can select from different types. In this case, well, the name of the format is standard. And I have a different choice of selectable symbols. So let's just go into the Metadata tab and see, well, there's a lot of parameters missing here. And I just create all the missing parameters in the respective source, either the part or the drawing. And I also do the designation for windshield. Quickly entering a number for the article and say OK here. So you see a different layout of a format with different information, and everything looks a little bit different here. Again, I'm adding a view of my part here. And what I'm doing now is I'm entering another drawing model. A model here. Another model from Customer West. Another general view here. Another part. What happens now in the background is that you do have a different active model. Well, if you're working with a PTC formats, and so the callout parameters will change in the title block. If you use SMARTAnnotate here, it tells you, well, be careful, I will change the parameter values if you're working on the active model. And you will see here, yes, that's still the case. Well, I have to update. Well, still the old one. If I update here, I get a complete different source of information here. Usually I don't want that because I created a drawing for my first part, but SMARTAnnotate lets me choose this and finalize this here. So the parameters won't change anymore. Finally, the last thing I want to show here in the user mode is very easy. I want to just show how simple it is to change the format size. Well, changing from A2 to A3, apply everything, new format, and even the notes have changed their space here. Everything looks fine to me, and I can continue working with the new size here. So the last thing in the live demo will be a quick look into the administration dialog. Well, when creating or setting this up, you have to deal with the filter tree in the first place. Well, let's just open, you can build it like you want. So there's no limits on this. So this is all what you can do yourself. And the customer West, my example customer, it has this parameter rule cast West, so that the software knows if this value is in the part, it should go into this context. On the right-hand side, in the objects area, we have used parameters, and you have to design or define the parameters. So just have a quick look at the SAP number here. So you'll have to enter a few properties like labels and definitions, names, and so on, and you can choose if the parameter shall be called out from the solid or the drawing, and you can define how the user should interact with it, either from an input panel where the user puts in any kind of numbers or letters, or from an option menu where he chooses from a list. And finally, you can define how the format should look like. In this case, as a maximum length 10 characters and a regular expression how they should look like. These parameters can be combined in parameter sets, and these sets are the lists that you later see in the user dialog. In this case, I have a collection for the customer West with the background color gray. And just to open this up once, you can protect these parameters from the user for interaction. So he can just read the value but cannot modify it. And finally, the format itself. You have the definition, well, of the labels. You call out or you select FRM file. You can select the size. You can add any kind of tables, and all the tables and symbols will get XY position in here for their location on the drawing itself. You can add standard annotations, parameter sets as you like, and define this as your format object. And finally, you have to assign these objects, the formats and the parameters to this filter context. So I could just use anything else, assign it here, and it will be listed later on in the user dialog. I think that's a very quick overlook to the SMARTAnnotate capabilities in the area of format management. And this brings me back to the presentation. And a quick summary. So as a summary, I just want to kind of compare the workflow and the methods between Creo and SMARTAnnotate. Well, in both cases, you can configure the title block as you like. There's more or less no limits in the design or what you can do. Keep in mind that if you're calling out parameters from a drawing, Creo always uses the active model as a callout source. Well, in SMARTAnnotate, you can specify the model and kind of block this, and the user cannot make errors here. You can use multi-language labels and parameter values in SMARTAnnotate. In Creo Parametric itself, you would have different formats for every situation. You can use selectable symbols for brands, logos, projection method, whatever you envision in SMARTAnnotate. Again, in Creo, you need to have another set of .frm files. The recommended workflow in Creo itself, you know this already, is using these .frm files. In SMARTAnnotate, SMARTAnnotate, you can choose if you do want to use them or if you want to work without them. And I think a very nice thing about SMARTAnnotate, it gives the user a very confident choice of customization for the parameter values. You can specify formats and guide the user to entering correct values. Yes, I think that's more or less what I had today. Before I open this session up or for questions, and just a quick look at our webinar week table, and we're still having a webinar in about half an hour about the news in SMARTAnnotate, and there is a few things tomorrow about color and color coding, and even how this information can flow into EDM electrode design. And yes, then I'm giving it back to Franziska, and she has been looking at questions coming in during the call, and I'm excited what you have for me.
Yeah, first, thank you, Jan, for your presentation. There's a question about the Creo versions. For which ones is SMARTAnnotate available?
Oh, well, a very easy question in the beginning. Well, I've been using this in Creo 4, but there's a version for Creo 5 and 6 already available, and we're right now working on a Creo 7 version, but this is a little bit more difficult because we have to consider the new multi-body functionality in there. And well, as you probably already know, you may call out parameters from bodies. And so this needs a little bit of tweaking the software in the background. And so this will be in the near future available for Creo 7.
Okay, and there's another question. Does this process work for an assembly drawing too?
Okay, also quite easy for me. Yes, you can use this all for assembly drawings as well. So there's no limits if you're calling out parameters from parts or assemblies. You can mix part and assemblies on your drawings, but you can specify the active model anyway. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So there aren't any questions at the moment. So I think we can go on and say thank you to you for taking part at our webinar and for your attention. And if you want to be up to date for the next webinars, you can subscribe to our newsletter. And if you want to replay this webinar or the others, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you will see there more videos about our software products, which could be helpful for you too. So if you have further questions later on or want to request the demo version, please don't hesitate to contact us. This is Jan Stotfang, our product manager, Fabian Wolf. They will help you for this. So thank you for your attention. Stay healthy and goodbye.